Of course, Parker, Oklahoma has lived in a world in the Big 12 for a long, long time where there has been little suspense about the schedule. Of course, it's just simply you play everyone. So just give us the date and the time and the network we need to watch, and there we go. And then we look for, okay, who do we have to play on the road, and where's the toughest stretch of games? But in the SEC, of course, the expansion to 16, there is a formula there that you can kind of follow along in regards to permanent opponents and so forth. But 2025's been released. And really what came to mind for me in looking at this, no Georgia, no Texas A&M, no Florida. But then on the other hand, three of the weaker teams currently, and you would have to think Vandy, Mississippi State, Kentucky, also not on the schedule to provide most likely wins. So did you have any impression on the schedule? And we can bring it up here.
Yeah, and I think we actually talked about this the last time I jumped on your show, is that this isn't necessarily murderer's row in the SEC, but it's also not a cakewalk either. It is a very middle of the road schedule, all things considered. You're playing a lot of those middle tier teams, and obviously middle tier in the SEC these days is upper tier anywhere else, right? So you're going to get challenged week in and week out, and I mean, you see it right there. You start off your very first. Well, I guess that's
game
scheduled?
2.
Okay,
The Michigan game.
Yeah, date TBA on all those conference games.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michigan on September 6th. That's going to be a challenge, and I don't necessarily know what the state of Michigan football looks like a year and a half down the road, but it's Michigan football, right? You're not going to waltz into Ann Arbor. Or wait, no, I guess that game is in Norman. It's Norman first, and then it's Ann Arbor in 2026. But you're not going to romp with that team on the other sideline any way you slice it. Texas is going to be a challenge. Alabama is going to be a challenge. I would think by year 3 down in Auburn that Hugh Freeze has that program in position to be able to be more competitive than they have been the last couple of years. Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri. Those are 3 teams that have a certain degree of volatility, if you will. You don't necessarily know what to expect from them in 2024, let alone 2025. You would lean towards Ole Miss maybe being the best of the 3 with all the talent they have assembled right there. But I mean, 3 programs right there that could just as easily be on track for 11, 12 wins as they could for 7 or 8 by that time. Any way you slice it, those aren't programs that you're going to be able to sleepwalk through. South Carolina, man, who knows? I love Shane Beamer to death. Former Oklahoma assistant. He's just he really seems to have his work cut out for him there at South Carolina. And it's that job and that opportunity, it's come with struggles these last couple of years. And then Tennessee, that's quite an interesting subplot to that game, obviously, with Josh Heupel, their head coach, the last man to lead Oklahoma to a national championship as their starting quarterback back in 2000. So I think top to bottom, it's an exciting schedule for Oklahoma. A lot of matchups that will compel fans. And there aren't, like you mentioned, you don't have a Georgia where I think the common mindset from fans walking into that game is, oh, we really got to play a perfect ball game in order to get this win. We're definitely the underdogs. That's not a mentality that Oklahoma fans are used to. And so I think it's probably for the best that they don't get that matchup the first couple of years, just so the fan base can get accustomed to the reality that, hey, you are not the Titan anymore. You could be one of them in time, but Nick Saban and what he has accomplished over the last 15 years at Alabama stands as one of the most impressive accomplishments in college athletics over the last half century, because their dynastic run came during a time where nobody else in the SEC seemed able to sustain dominance for more than 2 or 3 years at a time. And so the SEC is a league that has a lot of parity just kind of baked into the pie. Oklahoma is used to being head and shoulders above everybody else in the Big 12, and that's not going to be reality moving forward in the SEC. It will take some time for the fans to get accustomed to. And so again, I think it's probably for the best you don't have Georgia on the schedule those first 2 years, but in time, that adjustment will be made.
And I think you touched upon something there in the SEC, that despite the efforts of the Big Ten and bulking up as they have as well, that there's just a thicker tier of teams that have the history that have shown that they can compete for national championships, that they have the resources, they have the everything in place to do it. They don't do it consistently like a Tennessee, like an LSU, but they're certainly have everything in place. They've gone through their droughts, but there's a thicker list of those teams that you could run into that on a particular year could be as good as anybody in the country. And even if they're having a down year, they're still formidable and have to be dealt with from a talent standpoint.
Well, exactly. I mean, you think about years past for Oklahoma in the Big 12. If you play, say, the 8th best team in the Big 12, that's somebody like Texas Tech. And with as prolific an offense as Oklahoma has had for the last decade plus, you go into a matchup with Texas Tech, generally you're blowing the doors off that team. You're winning by 30, 40 points. You play the 8th best team in the SEC, Mark, that's somebody like Tennessee, for instance, where, okay, sure, like you play a good game, you'll probably win, but by the same token, if you give them the same margin that you gave a team like Texas Tech, if you give them the same number of opportunities, they're going to convert those opportunities with a lot more efficiency, and they're going to make you pay for mistakes much more so than the 8th best team in the Big 12 has ever been able to.
It's like the recruiting rankings. The 10th best team in the SEC is still number 25 in the country.
Yep.
Whether those are the rankings, because the record may not reflect that. So they may not be ranked number 25, but they're even the likes of Mississippi State with the right head coach is going 8-4 most of the time. So yeah, it's a difficult run, and it should be interesting.